Everybody, welcome back to the channel, and we've got a good one for you today. This is the update to the solo Unkillable Magicka Warden build called the ATRONACH. Now, this build is insanely easy to play, but also very powerful. Basically a tank and a damage dealer rolled into one, where you damage your enemies simply by blocking. Obviously, we have some self-healing thrown in. We have lots of ground-based dots as well to make a simple rotation that's easy for anybody to get started with. And the fact that you're just holding down block the majority of the time makes this build basically unkillable. It's going to be great for solo content, even solo and group dungeons if that's what you want to do. So let's jump right into it. Solo Unkillable Magicka Warden starts right now. Alright everybody, we're back on the Magicka Warden with an update to one of my favorite builds, the Unkillable ATRONACH setup. This build is actually very strong this patch, very flexible, fun to play as well. So let's go ahead and jump right into the solo setup here. Let me go ahead and buff a few stats. We can take a look at the stat sheet. Something like that. Let's check it out. So, starting with our attributes here, 32,000 max magicka, almost 30,000 max health, 20,000 max stamina. So our stats are looking very good overall. 1,000 magicka recovery, good health recovery and stamina recovery. Our spell damage will go up much higher once we're fully buffed. We do have major courage on this setup, as well as our back bar glyph. So it'll be more like 5,000 or so fully buffed. 52% critical is not bad at all, considering this is mostly like a heavy armor setup. Then we have very good penetration once we have our debuffs, good resistances as well. So this is a very stat-dense, powerful setup. 64 points into max magicka for our attributes. Magicka, it will be your main offensive stat. This is a Magicka Warden. 64 points into magicka, being the Magicka Warden setup that we are. And then as far as the food buff here, Bewitched Sugar Skulls, just giving you as much stats as possible. That's going to be very important on this setup. The extra health recovery is nice. Also, Thief Mundus for the extra crit chance. It's going to help with our offensive capabilities a little bit, since this is a more defensive-oriented build. You do want to max out your crit and your damage as much as possible, so you don't kill things too slow. Consumables, I do prefer tri-stat potions if you have access to them. Otherwise, you can just sort of rotate between magicka and stamina, whichever is your lowest. You will be balancing your stats a little bit on this particular setup. And then as far as the optimal race, I think there's actually a lot of different races that could work pretty well for this. I went with the more offensive focus, which is going to be Khajiit. You get a nice mix of stats, recoveries, and then critical damage, plus critical healing, so that does actually help quite a bit on this setup. I think Dark Elf is very good too for the max stats and the extra weapon and spell damage. If you want more of a defensive or sustain option, definitely something like Imperial, maybe Breton as well would be quite nice. I think that covers the basics, so let's go ahead and jump into the gear sets next. Starting with our main set on this build, our defensive option, the Frozen Watcher set. Now, this is a dungeon DLC heavy armor set, so it's great for tanking, but I also like it on the Warden because it's specific to frost damage. You can see whenever you're bracing, so basically when you have your block active, you're going to do frost damage in the area. You have a bonus chance of inflicting the chilled status effect, and the damage is based on your max health. So as a solo setup, we are prioritizing our max magicka more so than health. So we don't have a ton of damage on this. It's really just for the little extra AoE damage while blocking, plus the status effect chance is pretty nice. Being heavy armor as well, more protection is always good. So you can choose how to run this any which way you want to. You can run 5 pieces on the body. I would recommend running at least a couple of jewelry pieces. So I have 2 pieces here, 2 Watcher rings. That's going to let you run a few more light armor pieces on the body to get some more offensive stats. I've got 2 pieces on the ring, and then I've got 3 pieces on the body. I've got the legs and the chest. Those are probably the best body pieces because they get the most armor. Got the helmet as well. So again, helmet, chest, legs, 2 rings. Again, you can run that in different ways if you prefer. Rings, I'm going to choose spell damage. Bloodthirsty as the trait if you can get it. body pieces, I'm going to choose Max Magicka as the enchant. Some Divines pieces, I also have a mixture of sturdy traits as well. About 3 to 4 of Divines versus sturdy, either way, is going to be a nice mix of stats for you. So that is our main defensive stat. It's nice to run it on the body, I would say, and the jewelry, just because you'll get that extra, block on your front bar and your back bar. So having it as a body set or a mix of body and jewelry is sort of the most flexible. And you can see that the AoE damage frost effect there is quite big. The radius is pretty nice. So it's great for AoE dealing with crowds as well. All right, second 5-piece set. It's going to be our more offensive potential set that we're running on the front bar. Order's Wrath. This is the new crafted set from the High Isle chapter. One of the best new crafted sets you have access to in the game right now. Gives you a lot of critical chance, spell damage, critical chance again, and then bonus crit damage and crit healing. So it plays very nicely on the Khajiit. Also nice with the Warden, if you can get that minor brittle effect going. It's a really nice combination. Plus the fact that this is crafted means it's very easy just to fill in the gaps for your build to make up this next 5-piece set. So basically whatever you don't have access to on Frozen Watcher, you can make those up with Order's Wrath pieces. So I did do my front bar one-handed weapon. This could be anything, axe, dagger, does not matter. But then you do definitely want the Order's Wrath shield. I've prioritized sturdy here for a little bit of extra block mitigation. Max Magicka, of course, we're stacking that. So the shield is nice because you get an extra magic enchant, actually. You can get higher Magicka with a sword and shield build like this. But that's going to count for 2, and then I just have that active on my front bar. So I've got Order's Wrath waist, hands, and feet. So that's going to be my 5-piece setup there. Again, Max Magicka. Combination of sturdy and divines, whatever you have access to will be fine. All right, that leaves us with 2 leftover set pieces. You can see for the shoulder, I went with a 1-piece monster set that's going to be Slimecraw for this particular setup, just to get that crit chance a little bit higher. Again, sturdy or divine is going to be fine for the trait choice there. And then that leaves 1 extra piece, so that's going to let us run a mythic on this build, which is going to be very nice for increasing the overall power of this setup and the versatility of the build. I like the Sea Serpent's Coil a lot for this particular setup. This does kind of slow you down, but as sort of like a semi-hybrid tank build, we are pretty much, in place blocking most of the time as we're dealing damage with our Frozen Watcher, with our dots. So the movement reduction is really doesn't matter at all. You get a nice damage reduction when you're at full health, and then 2 major buffs here. Major Berserk plus Major Courage. That's about 10% bonus damage done, about 430 weapon and spell damage. Like I said, once you combine this with our back bar glyph, about 1,000 extra spell and weapon damage we can pull off in combat on this particular build, which is really nice. So yeah, this mythic is a really good choice. Not the only choice, I'd say. You could run Ring of the Pale Order if you want to. There's other options as well, but this just seemed like the most powerful setup here. So again, I put spell damage. I've got 3 spell damage glyphs here. Bloodthirsty is going to be ideal for a little bit of extra damage. Now, if you are struggling with sustain, you can put Magicka Recovery on one of these as well. You could do it in Infused Magic Recovery. Just play around with the stats, and whatever works for you, go ahead and do that. Last but not least, back bar weapon can be a Destruction Staff, a Frost Staff of your choice. Gone with the Maelstrom's Ice Staff here for just a little bit of extra damage. Main thing, whatever staff you use, is you want it to be infused with a weapon and spell damage enchant, just to get that extra 452 weapon and spell damage for 5 seconds. That's a really good buff to have access to. So that's the basic setup. It has changed a little bit from the classic version of this build. We've got Order's Wrath now, our main offensive set. Still using Frozen Watcher as our defensive setup. And then your mythic, whatever you choose there, with 1-piece monster set. There we go. If you want to see more options, the complete build will be in the written guide. Make sure to check out the link down below in the description for more information on that. With that being said, we can jump into the skills next. Like I said in the intro, this is primarily a solo setup, so I'm going to have the solo skills listed here Now, keep in mind you can substitute things in if you want this to be more of a tank build. Slot a couple taunts in here, some crowd control, and you are basically good to go. So this is a very flexible setup. Just keep that in mind. Starting on our front bar, the Sword and Shield, we're going to use Deep Fissure, which has got an interesting change this patch. They did increase the duration for update 35 on Deep Fissure, a 9-second duration, which actually is kind of nice on this particular build to sort of match up the timers of our dots. Of course, this does debuff the enemies too, which is really good for solo content. You have major and minor breach. So almost about 9,000 armor reduction means this is a very good offensive skill and debuff to have for solo setups. Keep in mind that the second hit here, if you can prioritize that second hit, it is going to deal substantially more damage. That's the way they've tweaked the Magicka version of the skill. You can see first damage is lower, second damage after the 6-second timer is much, much stronger. So try to hit the second one as well. If you can still kind of recast it early. You'll see in the rotation, I do recast it early once in a while just to keep up with the dots. But it is flexible, so you can choose to cast it early or let it go the full duration for more damage, which I do like. Okay, Barb Trap is next. This is from Fighters Guild skill line. Last ability here. We really want this for not just the dot, but also minor force. Since we have fairly good crit chance on this build, especially, running heavy armor, we've spec'd into crit chance. So having that extra 10% crit damage buff, along with the Khajiit, along with Order's Wrath, it's a nice stacking effect on our damage. So I do like this skill as well. Main heal is going to be Living Trellis. That comes from the Warden Green Balance skill line. This heal is just awesome. It's perfect for solo content. The more you get hit, the more healing you get, basically. Plus, you can recast it early. You don't have to hold on to it for the full 10 seconds. You can recast it early to get a little bit of extra healing back as well, which is really good. Then we got Bird of Prey from Animal Companions. Nice thing about this particular build is if you're running Sea Serpent's Coil, like I showed you, that gives you Major Berserk. This skill gives you Minor Berserk, so basically 15% bonus damage done on the front bar, which is really good. Plus, you can use it for a little bit of extra mobility. We do have, pretty slow movement, especially when you're blocking. You will be much slower, but you can use your bird to speed that up a little bit, which is good too. Then just a couple of passive buffs here. Inner Light from the Mages Guild. I do recommend this actually. Couple of reasons. Number one, it gives you more max magicka, which we are stacking. And then number two, Major Savagery and Prophecy. So a little bit of extra crit chance is good when we're on our front bar. And then finally, Reviving Barrier. This comes from the support skill line. And this is a nice emergency ultimate. If you happen to need it, you'll get a huge damage shield plus some extra healing. But I like it for the passive effect, which is right down here. Magicka Aid, 10% Magicka Recovery. This will be a nice way to raise our mag recovery a little bit. Just passively. You don't have to even use the skill to get that buff. All right, so that's the front bar. Let's go ahead and check out the back bar next. This is our Ice Staff, and we've got mostly dots here and a couple buffs. So Growing Swarm comes from Animal Companions. This is a nice dot and debuff. It's going to give minor vulnerability, increasing your enemy's damage taken. Now, why the stamina morph here? Well, it's mainly for sustain. I felt like I had, mostly Magicka skills, especially on the front bar. It's nice to throw in a couple stamina skills. I threw in Barb Trap on the front bar. I threw in Growing Swarm on the back bar. It just helps a lot with sustain to kind of spread out those resources. So yeah, you could use the Magicka morph. That does tend to do a little bit more damage. Every other cast, it gets buffed. So if you have like a good sustain raise or you're running Magicka recovery glyphs, you could try the Magicka morph as well. But Growing Swarm is a nice option too. Then we've got Destruction Staff, Elemental Blockade. We've talked about this already. This is basically to maintain your damage glyph on the back bar. So make sure you keep that skill up as much as possible. And then Winter's Revenge comes from Winter's Embrace. Since we're not fully spec'd as a tank on this particular build, this does end up doing quite a bit more damage than the tank morph. So because we have, extra spell damage, extra max magicka, I would recommend this morph of the skill. Then our buffs here, Blue Betty is sort of interchangeable with the Bullnetch. So it kind of depends on, your race and your sustain, also your champion points, how many sturdy traits you're running. For example, you need to look at your drain, basically. So your stamina drain while you're blocking in whatever content you want to do. If you want to solo dungeons, if it's overland content, whatever, you got to watch your stamina bar and make sure it's not draining too quickly. If it is, then I would recommend the other morph here called Bullnetch, because that restores stamina. If your stamina is pretty good, you're not having trouble sustaining that, you can throw in heavy attacks once in a while, then Blue Betty is definitely the nicer morph to go with, because you'll be able to cast more of your offensive skills, which are, mostly magicka based. Your Deep Fissure, your Blockade, your Winter's Revenge, all that stuff. So practice with the build a little bit, see which pool you're having the more trouble sustaining, and then pick the morph of this skill to help with that. Last but not least, Ice Fortress, really important. That comes from Winter's Embrace. Armor buff plus minor protection for 30 seconds. It's a great buff. Trying to keep this up as much as possible. And then our main offensive ultimate here, Northern Storm. We are just backbarring this because we get the increased weapon and spell damage for 30 seconds. Doesn't matter what bar we're on, we just need to cast the ultimate. You also get major protection, reducing your damage taken. So this is great to save for some tougher, ad pulls or ad waves if you're facing off a boss that you know the mechanics of. Save this for when things get a little bit more dangerous. You'll be able to take out those multiple enemies much quicker. Okay, quick rotation here on a world boss just to show you how things work. Obviously, start with your buffs on the back bar, Blue Betty and the armor. I'm going to go ahead and start with Deep Fissure and then do our back bar dots. There's 3 of those. Just maintain those in order. Go ahead and drop your ultimate if it's ready and then trap on the front bar. You see that our Deep Fissure just expired, so I can recast it and hold that block to proc Frozen Watcher. Usually I'll recast Fissure early here, because you can see my back bar dots are starting to expire and my buffs. You see Deep Fissure just expired too, so go ahead and recast that. Use your potion if you need to. You can see I haven't even had to heal yet. Got good passive healing so far. Deep Fissure, keep up your trap. You can heavy attack in between if you need to. Use your heal if you need to. And then just make sure that you're blocking on the front bar to proc Frozen Watcher. Make sure I keep Barb Trap up. Keep my heal going if I need it. Should have an ult ready on the back bar, so let me go ahead and get that going. So there you go, really easy. Getting the focus here, not pure damage, but a mix of damage and tons of survival and self-healing where you can really solo lots of content that is more difficult. All right, let's talk about what passives you need on the Magicka Warden. I would make sure that I start with Animal Companions. This gives you a lot of good passives. Bond with Nature, for example, gives you a quick heal whenever you use these abilities. Savage Beast gives you ultimate back, which is really good. Flourish is especially good. This gives you a ton of magicka and stamina recovery. And Advanced Species, this did change to give you penetration versus damage done. So it's not as good as it has been in the past, but for a solo build, especially if you're trying to go in dungeons, if you want to solo group dungeons or something like that, where enemies typically have more resistances, this can actually be pretty good. Moving on to Green Balance, you will want these as well. Main one here you want to pick up as early as possible is Maturation. This gives you 10% bonus max health for 20 seconds. anytime you activate a heal, and that can be any heal, not just your vines, for example, but also the heal from, animal companions. If I cast these skills, they heal me, and I also get my health buff. You can see my health went up to about 30k in that case. So that's a very good passive to get, especially for soloing. And then, yes, make sure you pick up Winter's Embrace passives as well. All of these are quite good. Make sure you pick up your one-handed shield, your destruction staff passives also. Remember, we're using both light and heavy armor. Light armor in this case is giving us most of our offensive passives and sustain. So we've got bonus Magicka recovery, cost reduction, extra crit rating, and extra penetration. All those are good. And then heavy armor is giving us our more defensive passives. So basically extra armor, extra health recovery and health, sustain, all that good stuff. So make sure you've maxed both of those armor skill lines as well. We do have Fighters Guild and Mages Guild passives that we're using, so make sure you check those out, as well as Undaunted for the Undaunted Metal passive. And then we also mentioned in support, if you are using Barrier, just for the passive, you need Magicka Aid. That's what that one is called. Finally, make sure you got your racial passives, all of those unlocked, and then Alchemy, Medicinal Use down here. Make your potions last 30% longer. Okay, what champion points do you need on this setup? Keep in mind, I will have in the written guide a full breakdown, 300, 600, 900, and 1200 CP there for you in case you need to check those out. But here are the main slotted stars. So in the green tree, we've got Treasure Hunter, then Rationer, Liquid Efficiency, and Steed's Blessing. Over in the blue tree, we've got Fighting Finesse, Fighting Aura, Master at Arms, Thaumaturge. Those are our main slotted stars. Also make sure you pick up these extra stats here. Eldritch Insight, Tireless Discipline, and then your defensive passive stars here, especially in Staving Death. Preparation, 10% damage reduction. That's huge, especially for playing solo. Red Tree, I've gone with a couple different things here. Now, I did decide to go with a more blocking focus build, as you saw from the gameplay and the setup. So a couple things you can try here. What is this one called? Walking Fortress. So in the Walking Fortress sub-constellation, Bracing Anchor seems really strong to me. While in combat, increase the amount of damage you can block by 4% per stage, but it also reduces the movement speed. So we've got 20% bonus block mitigation from this guy. Movement speed is not really an issue that I'm worried about. Then I also am trying out Soothing Shield, but I think this kind of depends on the content, right? If you are going through a dungeon where you have a lot of enemies hitting you at once, multiple enemies, this could be quite good because it's going to increase the chance of proccing the heal. If not, if you're more like just soloing a boss, I would not worry about that so much. I would probably go with Rejuvenation instead for the extra recovery. And then, of course, we've got Fortified for the armor. We'll want that. And then Boundless Vitality for the extra health. But those are the main slotted stars. Again, go ahead and check out the written guide if you want to see more of the passives and the different setups for 300, 600, 900, and 1200 CP. A link for those will be in the description below. All right, last but not least, we can go over the outfit style if you are curious about this particular setup. Under armor styles, most of these are heavy armor, and those are the Greymoor style that's from Western Skyrim. Combine that with the Molokina helmet. Right, everybody, with that said, that's going to wrap up this update for the ATRONACH solo Magicka Warden build for update 35 and beyond. Hope you guys enjoyed this one. It's one of my favorite builds, honestly. Very easy to set up, great for soloing all kinds of content. So if you enjoyed it, let me know what you think in the comments section. Make sure you crush that like button. And a little bit more gameplay here in the background in case you want to check out more of how the build plays and feels. We've got more updated builds on the way, more solo builds coming. Also, if you have any questions, make sure to check out the written guide for this one. Link will be down in the description. Over there, we'll have lists of alternate gear sets, alternate skills, champion point breakdowns, plus a companion build if you're into companions. Lots more content over on the website. That's hacktheminotaur.com. Finally, if you'd like to support the channel further, make sure to check out our channel membership, where we have tons of great perks, including early access to videos, and our members-only build library with even more off-meta, fun-to-play builds like this one. You can click on that join button down below for more information and a list of builds. Definitely worth checking out. With that said, thank you all again for watching. I hope you're doing well. Stay safe out there, and I will see you around in the next video.